The snow had not yet melted from the shoulders of the pines when Clint Roden walked into Alderfork for the first time in 3 weeks. The town smelled of wood smoke and judgment, sweet on the outside, bitter underneath. Clint moved like a shadow beside the plank storefronts, his boots creaking on frostbitten ground, beard thick as pine bark, eyes hidden beneath the brim of a sweat-dark hat. He didn't nod at anyone, didn't speak, just walked straight through the murmurs and glances, past wagons with idle wheels, toward the makeshift platform rising like a gallows in the town square. The auction was already underway. They called it charity, but even dogs could smell the shame baked into it. Women no one would claim, lined up like cattle, some widowed, some runaways, some just too poor or strange to be seen as proper. The mayor's voice, slick with syrup and something meaner, carried across the cold air. Now here's a good one, tall, strong frame, quiet disposition, and modest too. Just look at her. But you couldn't. Not really. The girl stood with a burlap sack over her head. Her shoulders were drawn in, her arms bound with a cord, though not cruelly. Still, she didn't resist, didn't move, didn't speak. Just breathe, soft and shallow. Someone laughed. She got a face like a shovel under there. Another piped up. Could be a ghost. Might be the prettiest gal alive. Or the ugliest. Laughter rolled like dry thunder. Clint didn't flinch. He stopped a few paces from a platform, studying her the way a man studies a wounded animal, carefully, quietly, with something like reverence. The mayor cleared his throat. Let's start the bidding at a fair price. $1. Silence. Then, a quarter, someone chuckled. Half. No takers for $1. The mayor's smile was slipping. Come now, gentlemen. Clint reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 silver coins, and tossed them into the dirt at the mayor's boots. Gasps broke the air like cracking ice. $2. Hester Quayle, the midwife, leaned over the rail. For a woman with a sack on her head? You mad, Clint? He said nothing, just looked at the girl. The mayor hesitated, sensing something off-kilter, but greed won over. Sold to the Lumberjack. May you both find what you're looking for. They didn't remove her bindings. Clint did it himself, gently, loosening the knots like he was unwrapping something fragile. She didn't look at him, didn't touch his hands. She just stood there a moment longer, then stepped down, without a word. They walked out of town in silence. Snow broke beneath their boots in soft whines. The air tasted like rust and ash. Behind them, gossip bloomed like weeds, questions half-whispered, answers invented whole. Clint's cabin stood 3 miles into the trees, where no sound traveled but wind and birdsong. The porch sagged under the weight of years. A narrow stream curled behind the smokehouse. He opened the door and let her step in first. Inside it was warm but bare. A stove, a cot, a table with 1 chair. A hand-carved bowl on a shelf. A map nailed crooked to the wall. It wasn't much, but it was clean. Honest. He set her bindings aside and lit the fire higher. You're safe here, he said. She said nothing. Didn't lift the sack. He placed a tin bowl of stew on the table. Sat across the room. Picked up a knife and whittled a sliver of pine without looking up. The blade made soft, rhythmic whispers. She didn't eat. Just held the bowl in her lap. The hours dragged like wounded things. Outside, the light faded from gray to blue to black. He brought her a blanket, laid it beside the cot, pointed to it, then quietly walked outside with his axe and sat on the chopping block beneath a sky full of stars that seemed too sharp to belong to Earth. In the early hours, just before dawn, the door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn. She stepped outside barefoot, blanket over her shoulders. Snow hissed under her toes. The sack was gone. She held it in one hand like a snake shed of skin. Her hair was dark and tangled, her face pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but beautiful in the way storms are beautiful before they break. He looked up. She stared back. My name, her voice cracked. She swallowed, then said it again, quieter. My name is Mercy. The word hovered between them, brittle as glass. He nodded, as though he'd known it all along. Not her name, but that she was more than what they said. That behind the sack and silence lived something holy. Mercy, like a prayer that had taken flesh and walked into his life. She stepped closer, not touching, not speaking further. Just stood near him, their breath visible in the morning air. And from the woods came the sound of thaw, the slow drip of melting ice, the first note of birdsong, the low creak of waking trees. Something was beginning, or returning. And though neither said a word more, both understood that whatever came next, it wouldn't be alone. The thaw came slow that year. Not in weather, but in the soul of the woods, and in mercy. Snow still lingered in the shadows of the tall pines, but inside Clint Roden's cabin, the chill had begun to lift. Bit by bit. With quiet gestures, not declarations. A bowl washed without asking. A coat mended while he slept. Her humming as she swept the floor, soft as water against stone. She didn't speak much. Not yet. But when she did, her words came like seeds, small, careful, and meant to grow. Clint never asked where she'd come from. Not because he didn't wonder, but because he knew the difference between a wound healing and one still bleeding. He gave her time. And silence. And wood, stacked high, chopped clean, carried in without complaint. His own words, when they came, were few. But they mattered. "I don't lock the door," he told her one morning, as she stared at it too long. "Never have." She nodded once, and he saw something loosen in her shoulders, a rope tugged, less tight. In town, they noticed. Of course they did. Hester Quayle stopped him outside the general store with a loaf of bread in one hand and a crooked grin on her face. "You married that sack girl yet, Clint?" she asked, loud enough for others to hear. "Or still just playing house in the woods?" He didn't look at her. Just took his coffee tin and left $1 on the counter. Behind him, laughter spread like rot. Back at the cabin, Mercy waited by the fire. She'd swept pine needles from the porch and hung her wet dress on a line to dry. She wore one of his flannels now, rolled at the cuffs. It swallowed her, but she looked braver in it. He placed the tin on the table. "They're talking." "They always talk," she said, without turning from a window. That night, by lantern light, she spoke again, longer this time, eyes fixed on the flicker between them. "I was born Mercy Talbot. No family to speak of. Got work on a ranch south of Cinder Hollow. Owner was a man who didn't like women saying no." She paused. Clint said nothing. He tried. "I ran, but not before his men caught me. Beat me good. Sheriff looked the other way." She glanced at her sleeve. Said I was lucky to walk away. Clint's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. His hands were steady as he passed her the last piece of cornbread. "I came north. Thought maybe there'd be some church that'd take me in. But towns don't want used girls. That's when Thorne found me. Said I could be auctioned kindly. Said it was a way forward." Her voice caught. "They put the sack on me to keep it decent." He exhaled through his nose. Not anger, not disbelief, just grief without noise. She looked at him then. "Why'd you buy me?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "Didn't buy you. Bought the moment that meant you'd walk away from that stage and not go back." She blinked, and her breath trembled. No words came. She set her hand on the table between them, palm up. He reached out, rough fingers brushing her skin like wind on water. Held it. Spring came early after that. By the 3rd week of thaw, Mercy had started planting wildflower seeds near the window. Clint fixed the roof. She taught him how to stitch without puckering the thread. He showed her how to trap rabbits without breaking their bones. They shared no bed, not yet, but she'd begun sleeping on the cot without the blanket wall between them. Still, the town pressed closer. On a rain-heavy morning, Clint returned from trade to find a scrap of paper nailed to his porch. "You sleep with a whore, you'll die like one." He burned it in the stove. Told her nothing. But that night, he sat closer than usual, knife carving a figure into pine wood, a bird in flight, wings open wide. "I want to give you something," he said. "I don't need anything. Still." She took the carving, held it like a relic. Then kissed the crown of it, pressed it to her chest. 2 days later, they stood beneath the tall trees behind the cabin. No preacher, no crowd, just pine boughs swaying above them, and a lantern swaying gently from a branch. Clint wore his cleanest shirt. She wore her hair down. He didn't speak vows. He just took a nail and hammered her name into the tree behind them. Asterisk, asterisk, Mercy. Asterisk, asterisk. Not carved like a possession. Marked like a promise. She pulled a red bandana from her pocket, his now hers, and tied it around her ring finger. They stood together as light dimmed, hands clasped, saying nothing. Just breathing. Just being. Behind them, the wind whispered through the trees like voices of the dead, watching, remembering. And somewhere in that hush, it became clear, this wasn't a story of saving. It was a story of seeing, of being seen. A man who talked to trees. A woman who once wore a sack on her head. and 2 hearts, Stitch quiet choosing to stay.